What's up, guys? It's your man KP67s, coming to you from my work, actually, because I thought this would be important. Yes, I am back. I'm finally done board exams. I'm in the process of moving. I thought that this would be a great time to come back and do a video because of the fact that we have Ships 2.0. Now, I know I haven't spoken about Empire ships, and I guess it's a glad thing I haven't, otherwise there'd be a lot of videos I'd be redoing. So I thought I'd go over the changes that each ship went through. A lot of the ships got nerfed, I'm sure everybody's aware of it, but there are some buffs that occurred that can be really clutch, and I'm hoping this video kind of steers those who have maxed out Empire characters to keep using Empire while they're trying to frantically farm up another faction. I still think Empire will be great offensively, maybe defensively, I don't know, but we'll just have to wait and see what time shows. At the bottom in the description, there will be timestamps for each ship, so if you care to just jump to one ship or another ship, please do so, but I do highly recommend you listen to the whole thing so you have a better understanding of what each ship is doing and what they're capable of doing. So the first ship we're going to be talking about is Darth Vader's TIE Advanced X1, and much like a lot of the ships, what happened is that it seems like you have all these extra added Omega abilities for the ships, and your damage was nerfed for a lot of ships, and it requires Omegas to bring it back to where it originally was, which is pretty annoying, given that Omegas don't drop. They drop a little better than Zetas, I'll give them that. But, they're a rare piece, and you have to be careful about who you're putting Omegas on. As you can see here, I put it on I Have You Now. I maxed it out. Now, it reads, inflict evasion down and ability block on the target enemy for 2 turns, which can't be evaded or resisted, and he gains 25% turn meter for each debuff on that enemy. And if the enemy is target locked, he dispels all buffs, and he removes 100% turn meter. The biggest change here was I think he gains a little bit of turn meter now, an extra 5%, and now he has an irresistible evasion down and ability block. It doesn't seem like much, but if you were to use this on a character who isn't target locked, you can shut down their special, which can be really key, and just help with Vader's maneuverability as a result. I also maxed here his basic daily accuracy because I wanted the damage back. Deal physical damage to the target enemy and inflict target lock for 2 turns, which can't be evaded or resisted. Another one that you can't evade or resist. If the person was already target locked, he inflicts 2 damage over time effect for 3 turns. This is good at just kind of putting on that chip damage that Vader is so well known for, as well as the fact that under a Thrawn lead, let's say, his damage hits hard on his basic. Now, I've had friends who have been able to one-hit KO a couple ships just by using his basic and with a lucky crit on it. Mind you, again, it's a lucky crit. So I don't necessarily like to rely on that. It's a lot of RNG to worry about. There's already enough RNG in ships. There's no need to add an extra factor of hoping you one-shot somebody with Vader. And then we have here his unique here, advanced targeting system. At max, I don't have it maxed, but it only adds a little extra turn meter gain here. Target locked enemies have minus 25% tenacity and immediately regain target lock for 2 turns whenever target lock expires on them. In addition, Empire allies gain 15% turn meter whenever they attack a target locked enemy. This is pretty clutch, and I can see what they're doing with Empire overall is they're trying to build the Empire as a TM manipulation team. If you're putting down target lock, you're gaining TM. If other Empire ships are attacking a target lock ship, they gain turn meter. If you kill a ship, we'll get to Tarkin, you'll gain more turn meter. Reaper takes and gives turn meter. It's a whole thing, but it all seems to revolve around completely shutting down ship offense now at this point. Not necessarily the capital, but ship offense. And then finally, we have his reinforcement here, which is Unnerving Presence. I did put 25 of those reinforcement pieces on him, but at max, what you're looking at here is Unnerving Presence. Inflict 3 damage over time effects and offense down on all enemies for 2 turns, which can't be evaded. Now, this doesn't sound like a lot. He's just basically spamming a ton of debuffs on the guy. But when we get to Tarkin, Okay, when we get to Tarkin and see what Tarkin's unique brings to the table, you'll see that Vader does a lot of damage once you get these debuffs on these enemies. So, you know, you could run him as a starter, you could run him as a reinforcement. It just depends on your style, your play style at this point. Okay, so that concludes Darth Vader's ship. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Gar Saxon's Gauntlet Starfighter, which is piloted by both Gar Saxon and the Imperial Super Commando. Now, this ship is probably the only Empire ship which received a significant buff to what it was originally, and I can see why they buffed him a couple ways because of the fact that no one has the Mandalorians up. Take it from me, from what I'm reading and from what I'm imagining, gear these guys. Gear them, star them, get to work on them. The reason why I say it will come at the end. So, we have Reinvigorate from Gar Saxon. At max with Omegas, you're looking at dispel all debuffs on all allies and grant them protection up for 2 turns, doubled for Empire allies. So if you're not Empire, you gain 30% protection up. If you're Empire, you gain 60% protection up. That's a pretty significant chunk, okay? And it's going to play in the rest of his unique, as we'll see. Over here, we have Imperial Super Commando, who deals physical damage to the target enemy and inflicts buff immunity for 2 turns once maxed. This is a clutch ability because of the fact that he inflicts buff immunity. Biggs' taunt is annoying, but if you can put a buff immunity on him, doesn't matter how many target locks the opponent is getting, Biggs will not taunt. Sunfac, who has that pop-up taunt, will not taunt. Just little things like that which completely shut down tanks, and that's why I see him. He was previously as well a tank killer, but he had a couple things missing which they fixed, and I'll get into it again. I'm really teasing you guys with the Gauntlet. Here we have the Gauntlet Assault. His basic deal physical damage to the target enemy, and target lock at max. He grants another random ally 25% turn meter. Again, lots of turn meter gain the Empire is gaining here. If you're manipulating turn meter, you're going to do well. It's a little dependent on target lock. Of course it is. So, you know, Vader kind of seems like an obvious choice for, you know, irresistible target lock. But the more target lock characters you hit, the more turn meter you're going to gain. And finally, we get to his unique, which receives some changes. And this is actually one that I'm saving Omegas for specifically. Superior maneuverability. Gauntlet Starfighter has plus 20 speed and gains an additional plus 15 speed for each active Empire ally, each other active Empire ally. Additionally, he grants 25% defense to all allies, doubled for Empire allies. So for the bottom part, if you're running an Empire squad, he gives 50% defense. That's a lot of damage mitigation, assuming, you know, you're not being critically hit by Thrawn a ton of times, which, you know, the AI seems to do almost every time. But the key here is how much speed the Gauntlet Starfighter gets. Now, I maxed Gar Saxon and Imperial Super Commando, so when you look at his speed is sitting at, as you can see here, 154, okay? Now, based on his unique, 154, he gains 20 speed automatically, so that puts him at 174. And if you pair him with, say, the TIE Fighter and Vader's X1 on an opening fleet, okay, 3 ships, you got Vader, TIE, and Gauntlet, he gains an additional 30 speed from the other 2 Empire ships. So now he goes from 174 to 204. He essentially becomes the tank killer he was meant to be, because he goes faster than even the TIE fighters at that point. If you land that buff immunity on Biggs, you will be coasting. You take a large amount of RNG out of the game for at least 2 turns. And when you look at his cooldown, you can see that 2 turns, you only leave 1 turn for Biggs to get anything off. So you can really shut him down as a tank. I know everybody's like, oh, Biggs became the best tank ever. He was already the best tank. He really didn't need anything extra. But they gave us an option to shut him down. But the issue here is that nobody has farmed the Mandalorians. And finally, we have his reinforcement, Viceroy of Mandalore. All allies recover 30% protection, and Empire allies gain 30% max protection. Again, he flies in, he pops extra protection on everybody, automatically recovers 30%, and then he gives 30% max protection, and then he slaps 60% protection onto your Empire allies. You've essentially healed them to near full protection, and a lot more than what it was previously. he really will tank up your Empire characters, which is what makes him very dangerous. And I've noticed the AI tends to target the Gauntlet a lot in this case. So that covers the Gauntlet Starfighter. Next up here we have the TIE Reaper, originally the OP as hell ship that everybody wanted, everybody needed in order to compete in ships. Got nerfed bad. He got nerfed, guys. The big thing here, and I'll start out of order here in this case, was Grim Voyage. If you were to max out Grim Voyage, before he would take I think it was 30 or 35% turn meter. So originally, it was the enemy capital ship loses 35% turn meter whenever any ship is defeated, which could not be resisted. Actually, that took me by surprise. I'm like, oh, I didn't read that part yet. And as you can see, they dropped it from 35 to 15. Whew, that's a huge change, guys. It's great, I guess, at kind of chipping away at capital turn meter, but it is annoying to see that drop from the OP amount that it was before. But I guess because you had to bring balance to the game, you had to bring balance to this mode, Grim Voyage had to take a hit. I mean, it just had to. That's just what it was. So, going on to the other abilities here, we have Heavy Interference, where he deals physical damage to the target enemy and dispel all buffs from them if they had no buffs. He increases their cooldown by 1 and removes 50% turn meter, and these effects can't be resisted. They can be dodged, stupidly, but they can't be resisted. If this attack removes any turn meter, it deals 1% more damage for each 1% turn meter removed. So you can remove up to 50% turn meter, so you'll deal 50% more damage with this move, and obviously at max you're just adding extra damage. Then we look at Shore Trooper's component. When it maxes Imperial support, TIE Reaper and target ally gain defense up and protection up 30% for 2 turns. If that ally is Empire, they receive an additional 20% protection up. Again, lots of protection that he can lay down, and it's kind of a big deal, actually. So, you know, for an Empire ally, you're looking at about 50% protection up. You know, you can just layer protection on with the Reaper, with the Gauntlet. Max, it's going to be really hard to get at the ships, but that's why you have to get at the ships fast. If these ships outspeed you, good luck. If you outspeed them, hey, you should be cruising once everybody's maxed. That's the key. Everybody needs to be maxed. Then we look at his basic here, which is Defensive Battery. Deal physical damage to the target enemy and inflict offense down for 1 turn. If that enemy has no debuffs, this effect can't be resisted by rebels. Nothing special, as you can see. It's pretty much what you see is what you get. And finally, we have his Reinforcement. Defensive Formation. Remove 10% turn meter from all enemies, inflict defense down to everyone for 2 turns, and everyone else, all your allies, gain 10% turn meter. There's a lot of ship TM manipulation here with the Reaper, and to be honest, I really think that this is a very powerful reinforcement, and I think this should be a reinforcement to max. I don't see Reaper becoming a staple in the start. I feel like he just doesn't bring that same TM control that he once did previously, but as a reinforcement, he can actually do a lot to kind of change the tide, let you get a couple extra attacks in. If there's an opponent who's weak but about to go, you bring in the Reaper, you mow him down with Heavy Interference, and then everyone else gets to go, which is pretty solid to me. Okay, guys, and that concludes the Reaper overview in this case. Okay, so the next ship we're going to cover is the Imperial TIE Fighter, and again, just like the Reaper, the Imperial TIE Fighter got really nerfed. The big thing here that got nerfed was his dodge rate. Before it was a 50% dodge chance, and now as you can see there, he's sitting at about 26% dodge. Ugh, that sucks. But, you know, again, you had to bring balance. If you're going to use Akbar, if you're going to use Mace, if you're going to use other comps, you can't have the Empire be the be-all, end-all meta. It's stupid, I know. I loved how easy ships was previously, but you gotta adapt, guys. You gotta adapt. So, changes, relatively changed here. Control thrusters, he grants 25% turn meter to the allied capital ship whenever this ship evades an attack, so they up the amount of turn meter the capital will gain while decreasing the amount of dodge that he has, and this effect is doubled for Empire capital ships. So if he happens to dodge, you are giving your capital 50% turn meter, which is huge at getting ahead of your opponent in this case. His basic, nothing special here. The LS1 laser cannon, deal physical damage to target enemy with a 70% chance to inflict target lock for 2 turns. I feel like he never inflicts target lock these days. I don't know if it's broken. He also hits very weak. I need the Omega on him because that's where he's going to bring the damage back up. Just a lot of annoying changes, guys. Just nerfing how much damage they do and basically saying, hey, you have to stockpile stuff and wait for like a good 2 months to get anybody back to where they were at this point. And then we have the TS8 targeting computer. Deal physical damage to the target enemy and gain foresight for 2 turns. If the opponent has target lock, he inflicts buff immunity for 3 turns. Nothing special there. I think they increased foresight 1 extra turn, but that's about it. And then finally we have his reinforcement here, the twin ion engine. Remove 50% turn meter from a selected enemy which cannot be evaded or resisted. I mean, like, I think it's okay. I don't know how useful that could be. If you wanted to shut down someone who's gonna like pummel you like FO Ty or something, okay, cool. But I don't know, I really feel like I wouldn't take Ty off the starting lineup if you're gonna use Ty. You could try this reinforcement, but I think there are better reinforcements to think about, such as Reaper, potentially Gauntlet, potentially Vader, etc. And with that, guys, this concludes the TIE Fighter. So now we enter the capital ships, and we're going to start off with the Executrix, Tarkin's capital ship. There were a few buffs that Tarkin got here in this case. Again, a little bit of a damage nerf where you have to give Omegas to kind of bump him back up. Annoying, I know. But he received some pretty decent buffs that, to the initial impression, does not seem useful, but actually is quite useful. So his unique here, Victory at All Costs, which I maxed, allies gain 20% offense for each debuffed enemy, doubled for Empire allies. That didn't change. So if you have, like, you know, a bunch of ships debuffed, you're going to gain 40% offense for each debuffed enemy for any Empire ship. And then allies also gain 20% turn meter whenever any ship is destroyed. So instead of speeding up your capital or slowing down the opposing capital, you're speeding up your own ships so they get to take more turns as a result. Again, TM manipulation, as you can see here. So if you're gaining a ton of TM and you have target lock on the ground, you're gaining, you know, like 40% turn meter from Darth Vader's attacks, from TIE Fighter's attacks, from Gauntlet's attacks. You're dropping turn meter with the Reaper. You're seeing how it all comes together as a TM control team, much like the way it is for Arena. His basic here is turbo laser batteries, nothing special, just damage. Deal physical damage to target enemy and inflict tenacity down for 2 turns. Doesn't seem like a lot, but we all know tenacity down is money in this game. You need tenacity down. His AoE here, which I'm close to maxing out, and I want to, deal physical damage to all enemies with a 70% chance to inflict ability block for 1 turn. This attack deals 35% more damage to each to debuffed enemies. And then the Executrix has an 80% chance to inflict expose on all debuffed enemies for 2 turns. So if you spread your debuffs around and you use your AoE and you hit everybody, you have a pretty high likelihood of slapping expose onto every single ship there. And expose, from, like, you know, what we know about resistance, does a lot of damage. Okay, guys? Lots of damage with expose. So that's why I'm trying to get it to the point of maxing it, because currently it's sitting at 50%. I would love to get it to 80%. We have his infamous Imperial Assault here. Deal physical damage 12 times to random target enemies, which can't be evaded. You target lock enemies. Anybody who's target locked, actually, are also stunned for 1 turn, and this ability starts on cooldown, a cooldown of 5. Now, all ships except for Thrawn have a cooldown of 5 on their special, and Thrawn has 4. So that's kind of what gives Thrawn the advantage. Even though he's slower, he can get to his special faster, essentially. And then finally, we have his buff, Executive Order. All allies gain 30% turn meter and offense up for 1 turn. Empire allies also gain potency up and defense penetration up for 1 turn. This ability starts on cooldown. Now, as we know, when you look at Vice Ismar, when you look at Colonel Stark, you look at these characters which manipulate defense penetration, you can do a lot more damage. Look at Bayonets. Bayonets on the Wampa, he has 2 bayonets, he gains a ton of defense penetration. That's why he hits like a truck. So if you are giving them defense penetration up for 1 turn and you focus fire on a ship, chances are that ship is not going to be there very long. And with that, guys, that concludes the Executrix. And now the final Empire ship we're going to be covering is Grand Admiral Thrawn's Chimaera. This is a legendary battle ship. You know, this was the meta ship. Everybody needed to have Thrawn if you wanted to compete. But now, not so much. I don't think he's as useful as he previously was, especially on a defensive standpoint. So, going into his moves here. Strategic Dominance. This is his special, cooldown of 4. Instantly defeat target enemy and deal damage to all remaining enemies equal to 40% of their max health. You dispel all debuffs on your target ally and you grant them 100% health, 100% protection, and 100% turn meter. That is relatively new. The extra 20% turn meter gain, where now they gain max turn meter. And you increase all cooldowns on enemy capital ship by 1, and this ability starts on cooldown. So if you have a ship that is pretty useful and you want them to go, and you have strategic dominance and they're beat up, simply heal them, fire away, annihilate your opponent. Very, very useful ability. Calculated strike, nothing special. Targeted ally is called to assist with a plus 50% offense. Okay, so he does a little bit extra damage right off the cuff. The Phylon 07 Tractor Beam, maxed. Deals special damage to all enemies and remove 35% turn meter. You inflict speed down for 2 turns on any enemies that evade or resist this attack. So you either lose turn meter or you get speed down, which will overall slow you down. Very good at control. I think they nerfed the damage a little bit. It doesn't do as much damage. From my testing, obviously I have to build him up a bit more. He's only sitting at 6, so you could use the extra 15% damage there. But, you know, not as much damage, unless your AI, somehow AI just like one-shots everybody with the tractor beam. CG, nice job. And then we look at his unique here, Fierce Loyalty. All allies have 40% critical damage extra, doubled for Empire allies. So you're looking at plus 80% critical damage and plus 15% critical chance. When an enemy is defeated, all allies gain 10% tenacity stacking until the end of battle, and the reinforcement bonus is critical chance up for 2 turns. Vader, coming out from Thrawn, would be money if he opened up with his basic, because you're getting 80% critical damage, you're gaining 15% critical chance, and you come out with 25% critical chance. That is a ton of critical chance and a ton of critical damage. That is where you can have Vader just annihilate an opponent off the bat with his basic. Obviously, the AI being the AI, he doesn't open with his basic, he opens with his special. You know, because God forbid you let the AI actually do what it should do. But that's neither here nor there. And then finally, we have his buff ability, the Art of War. All allies recover 50% health and gain a buff for 2 turns. Offense up, foresight, and defense up for attacker, support, and tank, respectively. You inflict a debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. These effects can't be evaded. They can be resisted, but not evaded. Attackers are offense down, support is ability block, and tank is defense down. You know, a staple. They increase the heal a bit, up from 30%. They increase it to 50%. So, you know, nothing too crazy. It still does the same thing that it originally did. I personally find that with the amount of TM that Tarkin hands out with Empire, you can really just kind of roll right over a Thrawn fleet. Doesn't matter what their comp is. I've had very little issue beating any comps that people are trying out with a current setup of, TIE, Vader, and, like, you know, a tank. In this case, I've been using Sunfac lately. I used Biggs previously, just playing around and seeing what works. So there we go, guys. That concludes the Chimaera. And that just about wraps up going over each Empire ship, guys. I hope that this kind of ironed out some like weird wrinkles you may not have understood, kind of understood what kind of synergy these ships are going to work with. I'm still working on these ships and still trying to understand how they work with other ships. You know, a good reinforcement I think would be Boba Fett for obvious reasons. He'll come at a different time, but I thought I would just focus on ships that everybody would have up. Like, everybody's got Vader, everybody's got the Reaper, everybody's got the TIE Fighter, everybody's got Thrawn. How best to help you Imperial folks out there to keep hitting with Imperials and keep ranking up. All right, guys, have a good day.